Lakota warrior covered my mouth and whispered, "Don't speak, or we both die." Alex had always been drawn to stories that existed beyond the pages of books, stories that were hidden in the folds of history, whispered by the wind, or carried quietly in the eyes of people who had lived through them. Growing up, he had read countless accounts of explorers, travelers, and adventurers who had walked into unknown territories and come back with tales that seemed almost unbelievable. He had always felt a pull toward those stories, a desire to step out of his comfort zone and experience something real, something that would leave a mark on him forever. This desire had grown stronger with time, pushing him toward a journey that would change his life completely. For months, Alex had planned his trip. His goal was to learn more about the Lakota people, one of the Native American tribes that had a deep and rich history rooted in the plains of South Dakota. He had studied their customs, their struggles, and their connection to the land. He had read stories of courage, survival, and respect for nature, and he wanted to witness and understand these traditions firsthand. More than just observing, he hoped to connect with the people in a way that went beyond tourist curiosity. He wanted to listen, to feel, and to learn. But Alex also knew that this journey would require patience, humility, and most importantly, caution. The lands he planned to explore were vast, often empty, and sometimes dangerous for someone who did not know their secrets. Alex started his journey in the early morning. The sky was painted in soft shades of pink and orange as the sun began to rise over the horizon. He had packed lightly, taking only the essentials: a small backpack, a notebook, a camera, and a few basic supplies. He wanted to move freely, to be able to explore without feeling weighed down. As he walked through the rolling hills and open plains, he felt a strange mixture of excitement and nervousness. Every rustle of the grass, every bird in the sky, every distant sound seemed amplified in the quiet morning. He could feel that he was stepping into a world that was both beautiful and unpredictable. The first few hours were peaceful. Alex walked along winding paths, stopping occasionally to take notes or photographs of the landscape. He marveled at the way the sunlight fell on the tall grass, creating a golden glow that seemed almost magical. He noticed the subtle signs of life, the tracks of animals in the soft soil, the distant calls of birds, and the occasional deer moving silently in the distance. The plains felt alive, and Alex felt a deep sense of respect for the land and its inhabitants. He was a visitor in a world that had existed long before him and would continue long after he left. This thought made him both humble and alert. By midday, the sun had risen high, casting strong shadows across the plains. Alex took a small break near a stream, drinking water and eating a simple meal. As he rested, he thought about the stories he had read, stories of Lakota warriors, their bravery, and their deep connection to the land. He wondered if he would meet someone who could share those stories with him, someone who could give him a glimpse into a world he had only imagined. Little did he know that he was about to encounter exactly that, in a way he could never have anticipated. As the afternoon progressed, Alex found himself drawn toward an old, abandoned fort that he had read about in local guides. The fort had been built many years ago and was said to have a mysterious history, connected to both the settlers and the Native American tribes of the area. Some stories spoke of battles, others of hidden treasures, and still others of spirits that wandered the land. Alex was not superstitious, but he felt a thrill at the thought of exploring a place with such history. He knew he had to be careful, but his curiosity outweighed his caution. He approached the fort slowly, noticing the crumbling walls and the faded signs of what had once been a bustling place. As he stepped closer, the shadows grew longer. The sun was beginning to set, and the temperature started to drop. The wind whispered through the broken walls, carrying with it a sense of quiet mystery. Alex could hear the faint sounds of animals settling in for the night, and he felt a shiver of anticipation mixed with unease. He reminded himself to stay alert, to pay attention to every sound and movement. The fort seemed empty, yet it felt as if it was holding its breath, waiting for something or someone to arrive. Alex entered the fort cautiously, his footsteps echoing on the stone floor. He walked through the remains of old rooms, noticing the marks left by time, cracks in the walls, faded paint, and remnants of objects long forgotten. He imagined the lives of the people who had once lived here, the struggles they had faced, and the decisions they had made. There was a strange beauty in the decay, a reminder that history was not just in books but in the places where it had actually happened. Alex took careful notes, capturing not just what he saw but what he felt. Every detail seemed important, every shadow and sound a part of the story. As the light outside faded, Alex realized that he had stayed longer than he intended. The fort was now surrounded by darkness, and the plains beyond it were almost invisible. He could feel the chill in the air, and he knew that he needed to find a safe place to rest for the night. But just as he turned to leave, he noticed movement in the shadows. At first, he thought it was an animal, perhaps a deer or a fox. But the movement was different, deliberate, careful, and silent. Alex froze, his heart beating faster. He could sense that someone or something was watching him. He took a step back, trying to stay calm. His mind raced with possibilities, but he reminded himself to remain cautious. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a man dressed in traditional Lakota attire. His eyes were sharp and focused, and his presence commanded attention. Alex felt a mix of fear and awe. He had never seen anyone move with such quiet confidence, and he realized that he was in the presence of someone who knew the land intimately, someone who was trained to survive in ways that he could only begin to understand. Before Alex could speak or ask a question, the man moved closer and placed a firm hand over his mouth. The sudden action startled Alex, and for a moment, panic surged through him. The man's eyes locked onto his, intense and unwavering. Then in a low whisper, he said words that would stay with Alex forever. "Don't speak, or we both die." The seriousness in his voice, combined with the urgency in his eyes, made Alex understand that this was no ordinary encounter. Something dangerous was nearby, something that required complete silence and absolute trust. In that instant, Alex's mind raced, trying to process what was happening. He realized that his journey had taken a turn he could never have anticipated. The plains, the fort, and the history he had come to explore had suddenly become part of a real living story, one where his survival depended on silence, caution, and the guidance of the man standing before him. Fear mixed with curiosity, creating a strange, electric tension in the air. The wind continued to whisper through the grass, carrying with it the promise of both danger and discovery. Alex knew that this moment would define his journey, that it would become a memory he could never forget. He nodded slightly, signaling that he understood. The man's grip on his mouth relaxed just enough to let him breathe, but the warning in his eyes remained. The story of Alex's adventure had truly begun, not in the safety of preparation or planning, but in the raw, unpredictable reality of the night, where history, culture, and survival collided in ways he could never have imagined. The plains seemed to close in around them, the shadows growing longer and the silence deeper. Alex felt every sound, the whisper of the wind, the distant call of a bird, the subtle movement of leaves, as if the world itself were holding its breath. He realized that he had stepped into a story far bigger than himself, a story where trust, courage, and awareness would be the only tools he could rely on. And as he followed the Lakota warrior into the unknown, he understood that this journey would teach him lessons far beyond what any book or guide could offer. The forest surrounding the old fort seemed alive, though the darkness made every tree and shadow appear strange and unfamiliar. Alex's heart was still racing from the sudden encounter with the Lakota warrior. The intensity in the man's eyes had left a lasting impression, and his whispered warning, "Don't speak, or we both die," replayed in Alex's mind over and over. He had never imagined that a journey meant to explore history and culture could suddenly become a matter of life and death. The fear was real, but so was the fascination. He realized that he was about to experience a side of the world that few people ever saw, a world where survival depended on trust, silence, and instinct. The warrior's movements were precise and deliberate. Without letting go completely, he guided Alex through the remnants of the fort and into the nearby trees. Every step was careful, as if even the smallest sound could alert someone, or something, watching them. Alex struggled to keep his breathing steady, aware that any sudden noise could ruin everything. His mind raced with questions, but he quickly realized that this was not the time for words. The silence between them became a language of its own. Every gesture, every glance carried meaning. Alex watched the warrior's every move, learning quickly that his companion's experience in the land was far beyond anything he had ever encountered. As they moved deeper into the woods, Alex noticed details he had missed before. The way the warrior's feet barely made a sound on the forest floor, the way he could move through the shadows without being seen, and the subtle signs he left to avoid leaving tracks. Alex felt a mixture of fear and awe. He had read about survival skills, but seeing them in action was entirely different. Every decision the warrior made seemed calculated, every movement purposeful. Alex began to understand that this was a man who had been trained not just in fighting, but in understanding the environment, in respecting the land, and in using it to his advantage when danger arose. The tension was almost unbearable. Each step seemed to stretch time, and Alex felt as though the shadows themselves were watching him. He remembered stories he had read about people getting lost in the wilderness or encountering threats that they could not escape from. Now, for the first time, he was living that reality. The warrior's presence was both comforting and intimidating. He was a protector, yet his silent commands reminded Alex that any mistake could be fatal. Despite the fear, Alex felt a growing sense of respect for the man guiding him. There was wisdom in his caution, skill in his movements, and bravery in the way he faced the unknown. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, they stopped near a small clearing. The moonlight filtered through the trees, casting faint shadows across the ground. The warrior crouched behind a fallen log and motioned for Alex to do the same. He pointed to the dark shapes in the distance, figures moving carefully among the trees. Alex could now understand why silence had been so important. These were not friendly locals or fellow travelers. They were strangers, armed and alert, searching for something or someone. The danger was real, immediate, and invisible. Alex's heart pounded, but he forced himself to stay as quiet as possible, understanding that any sound could give them away. The warrior whispered again, this time using gestures to communicate more complex information. He pointed to the direction they had come from, then to the direction they needed to move, indicating the safest path through the woods. Alex nodded, trying to follow every signal precisely. He noticed the way the warrior scanned the area constantly, his eyes never resting, his hands ready for anything. Alex realized that he was learning more than just survival. He was learning how to pay attention to the world around him, how to notice the small details that could make the difference between life and death. It was exhausting, but it was also mesmerizing. As they moved along the edge of the clearing, Alex began to feel a strange connection to the warrior. Despite not speaking a word, there was an unspoken understanding between them. Trust had to be immediate, complete, and unwavering. Alex had always considered himself brave, but in this moment, he understood what true courage meant. It was not about showing off or taking risks for fun. It was about staying calm under pressure, following guidance, and doing what needed to be done even when fear threatened to take over. The warrior embodied this courage, and Alex felt honored to witness it up close. The forest around them seemed to close in. Every shadow, every rustle of leaves made Alex flinch slightly, but he forced himself to focus on the signals from the warrior. He noticed how the man used the natural features of the land to their advantage, hiding behind trees, moving along low ridges, and avoiding open areas. Every choice was calculated, and Alex realized that the warrior's knowledge of the land was not just skill. It was a deep understanding that came from living in harmony with nature for years. This was not just survival, it was mastery of the environment. Hours passed as they moved silently, never stopping completely but also never rushing. Alex's mind wandered to what could have happened if he had spoken, if he had ignored the warnings, if he had acted recklessly. The thought made him shiver, reinforcing the importance of silence and discipline. At the same time, he couldn't help but feel a growing sense of admiration for the warrior. The man's bravery, skill, and calmness under pressure were inspiring. Alex realized that he was witnessing a story far greater than his own, a story of survival, wisdom, and the connection between humans and the land. As they reached a small creek, the warrior paused, crouching low and signaling Alex to follow. The water reflected the moonlight, creating a shimmering path that seemed almost magical. The warrior pointed downstream, indicating that they needed to follow the creek to reach a safer area. Alex carefully stepped into the shallow water, feeling the coolness against his feet. The sound of the water flowing was louder than usual in the silence of the night, but the warrior moved in a way that minimized any noise. Alex realized that even something as simple as walking through a creek required skill and attention in a situation like this. Despite the fear and tension, Alex began to notice moments of beauty in the night. The stars above were bright and clear, the moon casting a silver glow over the landscape. The air smelled fresh, carrying hints of pine and earth. Even in the midst of danger, the natural world revealed its wonders. Alex felt a deep sense of humility, realizing how small he was compared to the vastness of the plains, the forest, and the sky above. At the same time, he understood that humans, when connected to the land and guided by wisdom, could navigate even the most perilous situations. The creek eventually led them to a narrow path hidden among the trees. The warrior gestured for Alex to follow closely and remain silent. As they moved along the path, Alex could hear the distant voices of the strangers searching for them. The voices were faint but unmistakable. Fear surged through him again, but he focused on each step, each signal, each movement. The warrior's presence was a constant reminder that patience, awareness, and trust were essential. Alex had never experienced such an intense mix of fear, respect, and admiration. Every nerve in his body was alert, every sense heightened. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the path opened into a small clearing surrounded by thick trees. The strangers had not followed them, at least not yet. The warrior lowered Alex to the ground and gestured for him to stay low. Alex lay on the soft earth, feeling exhausted but strangely exhilarated. He realized that he had survived a situation that could have ended in disaster if he had acted carelessly. The warrior finally spoke, still in a low voice, explaining that the danger was real and that they needed to remain cautious until sunrise. Alex nodded, understanding that this was only the beginning of a long night. As they rested in the clearing, Alex reflected on the events of the evening. He realized that his journey had already taught him lessons he could never have learned from books alone. He had learned the value of silence, the importance of trust, and the power of awareness. He had witnessed courage and skill in its purest form. Most importantly, he had experienced a connection with another human being that transcended words, a bond formed through shared danger and mutual respect. The night was far from over, but Alex knew that he was no longer just a traveler. He was part of a story that would stay with him forever. The moon slowly moved across the sky, casting faint shadows on the ground. The forest seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for the next chapter of the story to unfold. Alex stayed close to the warrior, feeling both fear and a strange sense of safety. He realized that he was learning more than survival skills. He was learning about humanity, about trust, about courage, and about the deep wisdom that comes from living in harmony with the land. Every moment was intense, every second meaningful. And as he lay there, listening to the distant sounds of the night, he knew that his life had changed forever. The night had grown deeper, and the forest seemed even more mysterious under the pale light of the moon. Alex remained crouched beside the Lakota warrior, his body tense but his mind alert. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the distant cry of an owl, the soft flow of a nearby stream, was amplified in the stillness of the night. He had learned by now that even the smallest noise could reveal their location to the strangers searching for them. The warrior, calm and focused, appeared to move with a rhythm that was part of the forest itself. Alex could not help but be amazed at how naturally he navigated through the darkness, using every shadow, every tree, every natural feature to his advantage. Alex had never felt so aware of the world around him. Every detail, no matter how small, seemed to matter. He noticed the way the warrior's eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, how his ears seemed to pick up even the faintest sound, how his body adjusted instantly to any change in terrain. Alex understood that he was witnessing a mastery that went far beyond ordinary survival skills. This was a man who could read the land, read danger, and respond in a way that ensured life itself. For the first time, Alex realized that courage was not just about action. It was about patience, observation, and intelligence. As they moved silently through the forest, the warrior began to communicate with Alex using gestures and eye contact. Each motion carried meaning. When the warrior pointed toward a particular direction, Alex understood that it was the safest route. When he pressed a finger to his lips, Alex immediately stopped breathing too loudly, suppressing even the faintest sound. The forest, once merely a landscape to explore, had become a living, breathing entity that demanded respect. Alex realized that every step they took required complete focus and careful consideration. One wrong move could draw the attention of the strangers still searching for them, and that thought kept his heart racing. Hours passed as they navigated the forest with careful precision. The strangers' voices occasionally drifted faintly through the trees, reminding Alex that danger was never far away. Yet, amid the tension, there were moments of awe. The moonlight revealed the delicate patterns of leaves, the gentle shimmer of the stream, and the subtle movements of nocturnal animals going about their lives. Alex was struck by the contrast, the serene beauty of nature alongside the very real threat that surrounded them. It was a strange combination, but it made him feel alive in a way he had never experienced before. Every sense was heightened, every emotion amplified. The warrior eventually guided Alex to a small, hidden alcove beneath a group of dense trees. It was a natural shelter, with branches overhead providing cover and the thick undergrowth concealing them from view. He gestured for Alex to stay low and observe. Alex could hear the distant crunch of footsteps and the muted voices of the strangers as they moved through the forest, searching, probing, unaware of the hidden pair watching them. The adrenaline in Alex's body surged. He realized that they had been lucky so far, but luck alone would not save them if they did not remain disciplined. The warrior's focus reminded him that survival was as much about mental strength as physical skill. As they rested in the alcove, Alex had a chance to study the warrior more closely. The man's features were strong and determined, his face calm yet alert. There was a quiet authority in the way he moved and observed, a confidence born from years of living in harmony with the land and understanding its dangers. Alex wondered how many times the warrior had faced similar situations, how many times he had relied on his knowledge and instincts to survive. There was wisdom in every gesture, every glance, every small movement. Alex felt a growing respect and gratitude toward the man who had taken responsibility for his safety without a single word spoken. The warrior began to show Alex, without speaking, how to move silently. He demonstrated careful foot placement, how to shift weight to avoid making noise, and how to use the natural features of the land to remain unseen. Alex struggled at first, unsure if he could replicate the precision he was witnessing. His steps were clumsy, his movements too loud, and the fear of being discovered made his hands tremble. Yet, with the warrior's patient guidance and repeated gestures, Alex slowly improved. Each step became more confident, each motion more controlled. He began to feel a sense of empowerment, realizing that he was learning skills that could keep him alive even in situations he had never imagined. As they continued, Alex noticed the subtle ways in which the warrior communicated the dangers around them. A slight tilt of the head indicated movement in one direction. A narrowed eye signaled a change in terrain. A hand pointing toward the ground showed a path that minimized exposure. Alex realized that communication did not always require words. In situations like this, silence was a powerful language. Trust had to be immediate, precise, and complete. Any hesitation or misunderstanding could have dire consequences. Alex felt the weight of responsibility, understanding that his survival depended not just on following instructions, but on understanding the intent behind every gesture. The night deepened, and the forest became colder. Alex shivered but forced himself to remain calm. The adrenaline and fear had kept him alert so far, but exhaustion was beginning to set in. Yet, despite the physical and mental strain, there was a strange sense of clarity. Alex felt connected to the world around him in a way he had never experienced. Every sound, every shadow, every movement of the wind carried significance. The forest, once intimidating, now felt like a teacher. And the warrior, with his silent guidance, was showing Alex how to listen, how to observe, and how to respond with intelligence and caution. At one point, they came across a fallen tree blocking their path. The warrior motioned for Alex to wait, then moved silently to find an alternate route. Alex watched closely, studying how the warrior assessed the terrain, how he looked for the safest path, how he calculated every movement to avoid detection. When it was safe, he signaled Alex to follow, guiding him carefully around the obstacle. Alex realized that this was more than a lesson in survival. It was a lesson in patience, observation, and problem-solving under pressure. Every decision, no matter how small, could mean the difference between safety and disaster. The hours seemed endless, but Alex slowly began to feel a rhythm. He and the warrior moved as one, their steps synchronized, their attention shared. Fear was still present, but it had transformed into focus. Alex understood that he was not just following a guide. He was learning to see the world through a different lens, one that required respect, awareness, and constant attention. Each moment was intense, each second precious. He began to appreciate the depth of knowledge that had been passed down through generations of the Lakota people, the wisdom of understanding the land, the dangers, and the balance between caution and action. Eventually, the warrior guided Alex to a small hill overlooking a wider area of the forest. From this vantage point, they could see more of the surrounding land and assess potential threats. Alex noticed the careful way the warrior scanned the area, mapping every shadow and movement in his mind. The strangers were still searching, but they had not noticed the pair hidden on the hill. Alex felt a mix of relief and continued tension. The danger was not over, but he now understood how to navigate it, how to trust, and how to act with both intelligence and caution. This night was teaching him more than he could have imagined about life, fear, and the power of human skill. As they settled into the hill for a brief rest, the warrior finally allowed a few moments of quiet breathing. Alex closed his eyes, feeling the cool air on his face, the distant sounds of the forest around him, and the steady presence of the man beside him. He realized that this night would stay with him forever, not just as a story of fear and survival, but as a story of trust, courage, and the power of learning from those who know the land better than anyone. Every lesson, every gesture, every moment of silence had become part of his understanding, shaping him in ways that would last a lifetime. The night had grown colder, and the forest seemed even darker, the moon barely breaking through the thick canopy of trees. Alex and the Lakota warrior remained hidden, crouched behind a thick cluster of bushes on a small ridge overlooking a clearing below. The tension in the air was almost unbearable. Every sound, the faint crack of a twig, the rustle of leaves, the distant calls of nocturnal animals, felt magnified. Alex's heart pounded relentlessly, but he knew that making a sound, even unintentionally, could put them both in grave danger. The warrior, however, appeared calm, scanning the clearing below with unwavering focus. Every motion he made was deliberate, every glance measured. Alex realized that he was witnessing a level of awareness and skill that went far beyond anything he had imagined. The threat was becoming clearer. Alex could now hear the voices of the strangers moving carefully through the forest below. Their footsteps were deliberate and calculated, signaling that they were experienced in moving quietly through the woods. Alex noticed the faint glint of metal in the moonlight, tools or perhaps weapons, and understood why the warrior had been so insistent on silence. Each second was critical. The slightest noise, the smallest movement, could reveal their position and change everything in an instant. Alex felt a surge of fear, but he also felt a strange exhilaration. For the first time in his life, he was experiencing pure survival, the kind that tested every instinct and every decision he made. The warrior motioned for Alex to follow him along a narrow, hidden path that wound through the trees. Alex moved carefully, following each signal with meticulous attention. The path was uneven, full of roots and rocks, but the warrior's guidance allowed Alex to move without making a sound. He realized how skilled the warrior was in reading the environment, choosing paths that minimized exposure while maximizing concealment. Alex tried to match his movements, focusing on each step, each shift of weight, each careful placement of his feet. Fear had sharpened his senses, making him notice details he would have ignored during any ordinary hike. The way the wind carried sound, the subtle changes in terrain, the faint impressions in the soil that revealed the stranger's movements. As they moved, Alex observed the warrior's knowledge of the land in action. The man used natural features as cover, hiding behind rocks, fallen trees, and thick shrubs. He moved with the confidence of someone who had spent years learning to survive in the wilderness, someone who understood every subtle sound and shadow. Alex felt a growing sense of respect for him, realizing that the warrior's skill was not just physical, it was mental, emotional, and intuitive. He was witnessing centuries of tradition and survival knowledge passed down through generations, a living example of the wisdom of the Lakota people. Alex felt humbled and grateful to be guided by someone with such profound understanding. The threat became more immediate as the strangers approached a small clearing. Alex could see the outline of their movements through the trees, hear their soft whispers, and sense their alertness. The warrior crouched low, pressing Alex gently against the ground to keep him hidden. Alex felt the weight of the situation fully. If they were discovered, there would be no time for hesitation, no chance to think. Survival depended entirely on following the warrior's guidance and remaining silent. Every second seemed to stretch, the tension almost unbearable. Alex could feel his own heartbeat echoing in his ears, but he forced himself to remain calm, realizing that panic could be fatal. The warrior used subtle hand signals to indicate a new route, one that would allow them to bypass the clearing without being seen. Alex followed every movement carefully, imitating the warrior's precision. The path was narrow and treacherous, with thorny bushes and uneven ground, but the warrior's confidence and knowledge reassured him. Each step was calculated, each movement deliberate. Alex began to understand that survival was not about speed. It was about patience, observation, and making the right choices under pressure. The night had become a test, not just of courage, but of focus, intelligence, and resilience. At one point, they had to cross a small creek. The water flowed gently, but was louder than Alex would have liked, threatening to draw attention. The warrior crouched low and demonstrated how to step carefully on rocks to minimize noise. Alex followed suit, holding his breath as he shifted his weight, feeling the cold water trickle around his feet. Every step was critical. The creek was not just an obstacle, it was a potential risk that could reveal their presence to the strangers below. Alex felt a surge of respect for the warrior, understanding that his guidance was not just about getting them through the forest. It was about teaching Alex how to think and act like someone who truly understood survival in the wilderness. Hours passed as they continued moving silently. The strangers' voices grew fainter, indicating that they had moved in a different direction, but the tension never fully left Alex's body. He realized that the forest itself was unpredictable, that danger could come from any direction at any moment. The warrior remained alert, scanning the surroundings constantly, his senses finely tuned to every sound, shadow, and movement. Alex began to appreciate the depth of his companion's skill, realizing that the man's experience and knowledge were priceless. He was learning lessons that went far beyond survival, lessons about awareness, patience, trust, and the quiet power of observation. At one point, the warrior stopped and pointed to a dense area of brush, indicating that they should take cover and wait. Alex crouched low, listening intently. The forest was alive with subtle sounds, the flutter of wings, the scurrying of small animals, the faint rustle of leaves in the breeze. Each sound could be a clue or a threat. Alex realized that he had never been this aware of his surroundings in his life. The warrior whispered instructions silently, guiding him on how to remain completely hidden, how to breathe quietly, and how to anticipate potential dangers. Alex followed every movement, every instruction, understanding that each one was a matter of life and death. The night seemed endless. Fatigue began to set in, yet Alex could not afford to relax. He felt every ache in his muscles, every tension in his body, but he forced himself to stay alert. The forest had become a living classroom, and the warrior was the teacher. Alex learned to move without disturbing the ground, to observe without being seen, and to think quickly without panicking. Each step forward was both a challenge and a triumph, a reminder of how fragile life could be when danger was so close. He realized that courage was not the absence of fear, it was the ability to act in spite of it. Eventually, the warrior led Alex to a slightly higher ridge, providing them with a better view of the surrounding area. From this vantage point, they could see the distant movement of the strangers, still searching but unaware of their position. Alex felt a sense of relief, but it was mixed with continued caution. The forest was still unpredictable, and the night was far from over. He understood that survival required constant awareness, careful observation, and absolute trust in the warrior's guidance. Each movement, each decision, could determine the outcome of the night. Alex's respect and admiration for the warrior grew with every passing moment. As they rested briefly on the ridge, the warrior allowed Alex a small moment to breathe and collect himself. Alex's mind was racing, reflecting on the events of the night so far. He realized how much he had learned, not just about survival, but about trust, observation, patience, and the quiet strength of someone who understands the land. The experience had been terrifying, exhausting, and exhilarating all at once. Alex knew that this night would stay with him forever, shaping his understanding of courage, skill, and humanity. The forest, once intimidating and unknown, had become a teacher, revealing lessons in every shadow, every sound, and every careful step they took together. The night stretched on, the forest silent except for the occasional distant sounds of wildlife. Alex remained crouched beside the warrior, feeling the weight of exhaustion and the thrill of survival. Every second was intense, every movement critical, and every sound meaningful. He realized that this journey had transformed him, teaching lessons he could never have learned from books or guides. The night had become a story of trust, courage, patience, and the unspoken bond between two people navigating danger together. And as the moon moved slowly across the sky, casting faint light on the forest below, Alex understood that he was part of a story far greater than he had ever imagined. The first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, casting a soft, golden glow across the forest. Alex could feel the tension of the night slowly lifting, though every nerve in his body remained alert. The darkness that had seemed so endless hours before was now giving way to the warmth of sunlight, but the lessons of the night were still fresh in his mind. He had survived fear, danger, and uncertainty alongside the Lakota warrior, learning more in a few hours than he could have imagined in a lifetime. Despite the exhaustion in his body, a sense of calm and reflection began to settle over him. The warrior moved with the same quiet precision he had displayed all night, leading Alex through a small, hidden path that wound gently downhill. The sounds of the forest had changed with the arrival of morning. Birds began to sing softly, and the wind carried a lighter, fresher scent. Alex noticed how the light revealed details that had been invisible in the darkness: the texture of tree bark, the patterns of leaves on the forest floor, and the subtle signs of animal tracks that hinted at the life around them. Every detail seemed to tell a story, and Alex felt a deep connection to the land, a connection he had never felt before. As they continued, the warrior gestured for Alex to keep quiet, though the threat of strangers had diminished with the approach of dawn. Alex understood immediately. The forest itself demanded respect, even without immediate danger. Every movement had to be careful, every step deliberate. The warrior demonstrated how to move through the trees and brush without disturbing the environment, showing Alex the importance of being aware and cautious, even when the danger seemed gone. Alex began to see the land not just as a place to explore, but as a living, breathing entity that required attention, care, and understanding. Alex's thoughts drifted to the events of the night. He reflected on the fear he had felt when the warrior first covered his mouth, the adrenaline that had surged through his body, and the intense focus he had needed to survive. Yet he also thought about the lessons he had learned, lessons of trust, patience, and observation. The warrior's silent guidance had taught him that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act wisely in spite of it. Alex realized that every step they had taken together had been a teaching moment, each one a reminder that survival required intelligence, awareness, and respect for both people and the environment. The path eventually led them to a small, serene clearing bathed in morning sunlight. The air was warm but crisp, carrying the earthy scent of the forest and the subtle aroma of wildflowers. The warrior finally paused and allowed Alex to relax slightly, removing his hand from Alex's shoulder in a gesture that signaled safety. For the first time in hours, Alex could breathe deeply without fear, feeling the weight of exhaustion lift slightly from his body. He looked around, taking in the beauty of the forest in the daylight, and realized that what had been a place of fear and danger the night before had now become a place of reflection and awe. The warrior finally spoke a few words in his native language, which Alex could not fully understand, but the tone was calm and reassuring. It was a quiet moment, filled with mutual respect and acknowledgement. Alex realized that the bond they had formed was deeper than words could convey. It was a connection forged through shared danger, mutual trust, and the understanding that each depended on the other for survival. He felt a profound sense of gratitude toward the warrior, knowing that without his guidance, he might not have made it through the night. Alex began to understand the significance of the night's events in a broader sense. It was not just a story of fear or survival. It was a story about humanity, courage, and the connections that form under extraordinary circumstances. The warrior's skills were impressive, but what had left the deepest impression on Alex was the wisdom and calmness with which he had approached danger. He had not acted recklessly or violently. He had used knowledge, patience, and intuition to navigate a dangerous situation. Alex realized that these were lessons that extended far beyond the forest. They were lessons about life, decision-making, and the power of trust. As they moved further from the ridge and deeper into the forest, Alex began to notice the changing sounds and movements around them. Birds chirped more actively, small animals scurried through the undergrowth, and the gentle rustle of leaves in the morning breeze created a soothing background noise. The forest, once so menacing, now felt alive in a nurturing way. Alex felt a sense of peace, though he remained mindful of the warrior's instructions and signals. He had learned that respect and awareness were ongoing practices, not something that ended with the removal of immediate danger. Every step, every glance, every careful movement was a continuation of the lessons he had learned. Eventually, the path led them to the edge of the forest, where the plains stretched out under the rising sun. The vast openness felt different from the dense woods, and Alex realized how much he had come to appreciate the forest's protective cover. The warrior paused at the edge, looking back briefly before motioning for Alex to follow. It was a moment of silent acknowledgement, a recognition of the journey they had shared and the bond that had been formed. Alex felt a deep sense of respect for the warrior, understanding that this was a person whose experience and wisdom went far beyond what he could ever hope to learn in a short time. As they walked toward a safer area, Alex reflected on the lessons of the night. He had faced fear, uncertainty, and the unknown, yet he had emerged stronger, wiser, and more aware. He had learned that survival was not just about physical skill, but about mental sharpness, patience, and trust. He had experienced the power of human connection under pressure, the way courage and wisdom could guide someone through the most dangerous situations. The forest had been both teacher and testing ground, and the warrior had been his guide through every step, every shadow, and every sound. By the time they reached a small, open clearing near a river, the sun had risen fully, casting warm light across the landscape. The warrior finally signaled that it was safe to speak. Alex exhaled deeply, feeling the tension of the night melt away. He turned to the warrior, gratitude shining in his eyes, and attempted to express the depth of his thanks. Words felt insufficient, but the warrior nodded in acknowledgement, a small smile breaking the seriousness of the past hours. It was a quiet, meaningful moment, one that captured the essence of the night's journey, the challenges they had faced, and the bond that had been formed in silence. Alex realized that this experience would stay with him forever. He had not only survived a dangerous night, but had also gained insights into courage, trust, patience, and the value of human skill and wisdom. The encounter with the warrior had transformed his understanding of the world. It was no longer about observing or exploring from a safe distance. It was about immersing himself, listening, learning, and respecting the people and the land he encountered. He felt a sense of humility and gratitude, recognizing that life could change in an instant, and that survival often depended on qualities far beyond physical strength. As they prepared to part ways, Alex took one last look at the forest that had been both a challenge and a teacher. The sunlight revealed its beauty in ways that had been hidden in the darkness. He felt a deep sense of connection to the land, the people who had lived there, and the warrior who had guided him. It was a reminder that life was full of unexpected lessons, and that courage, wisdom, and trust could carry someone through even the most frightening experiences. Alex knew that the story of this night would remain with him forever, a story not just of survival, but of understanding, respect, and human connection. Finally, the warrior nodded once more and turned to leave, disappearing into the forest with the same quiet confidence that had marked him all night. Alex watched him go, feeling a mixture of awe, respect, and gratitude. He understood that the man's presence had changed his life, leaving him with lessons that could never be forgotten. Alex took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the sun, the gentle rustle of the wind, and the quiet strength he now carried within himself. The night had been long, the challenges great, but he had emerged with knowledge, courage, and a profound understanding of the power of trust and human skill. As Alex began his journey back toward civilization, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The forest, the night, and the warrior had given him more than just a story. They had given him insight, wisdom, and a deep appreciation for life. He walked with careful steps, mindful of every movement, yet feeling lighter, stronger, and more aware than ever before. The experience had been terrifying, exhausting, and exhilarating, but most importantly, it had been transformative. Alex knew that he would carry the lessons of this night for the rest of his life, a story of courage, trust, and survival that he could share, not just as an adventure, but as a testament to the power of human connection and the wisdom of those who understand the land.